Hey everybody, it's Marla. Welcome back to Twinstrology, where we talk about twin flames, astrology, and ascension. And today we're going to be talking about the Aquarius New Moon and specifically how this relates to the shift within the separation wound that we're experiencing right now. I posted a video in December about how we had reached this tipping point with the separation wound, and that feeling of being separate, whether it's from your twin flame, your soul family, from your own soul, or from God, like all the different ways that we're separated, that's going to begin to start dissolving. Okay, so this new moon is very key because there's some very important astrological aspects happening. Now, a lot of what I'm going to be talking about in this video is going to be expanded on in another video I'm posting this weekend called Serious Shifts 2023. So that video is about kind of the overall energy of this year and how healing the separation wound is going to be coming through and how it's going to affect us. Originally, I had posted a little bit about this new moon at the end, and then I decided that it needs its own video because it's so important. But I do hope that you'll watch that companion video as well. So what we have going on at this new moon is a grand cross. And on one leg, we have the sun and the moon and also Pluto, and they're forming a conjunction. The sun and the moon are in Aquarius at the 1st degree, and Pluto's there at the 28th degree of Capricorn. And Lilith is opposing the new moon at 1 degree Leo. So Lilith and the new moon are in a very tight opposition. And then those are being squared by the north and south node. So when we have a grand cross like this involving the nodes, we know that we're wrapping up some kind of karma, okay? Because the south node is representing our past lives, the north node representing, where we're going, the kinds of things that we're learning, where our growth is basically. So these are things that are unresolved within us. And they're unresolved in each of us individually, but they're also unresolved as a collective. And a lot of the polarity and things that we see in the collective, we can bring that all back to these kind of unresolved feelings that we're dealing with right now. It's that separation, right? We can't come into a unity consciousness if we're all still believing that we're separate from anything, or if we're separate from our community, most importantly, if we're separate from God. And that's really a lot of the energy that's happening here at this new moon is like coming back to God. And I don't mean that like in a religious way, but I mean that as in unconditional love, Christ consciousness, and being in alignment with God and God's divine plan, so that we can begin to come together and work more as a collective community, really embodying that Aquarian energy that we're all waiting for. So with the new moon being on the 1st degree of Aquarius, I think that is giving us an indication that this is going to be an important shift heading towards this Aquarian energy that we view as that kind of utopian energy where we all work as brothers and sisters, but we can't get there until we clear out all this karmic junk. Hence, we have this fixed cross going on. And it's interesting that we have Lilith and Pluto involved here. I see Lilith as being like the feminine version of Pluto. Pluto, of course, represents the masculine energy. It has the higher octave of Mars, but Pluto also is our shadow self. And those like buried things in our subconscious, the things that we're ashamed of, the things that make us feel guilty. And also Lilith represents this energy as well, because Lilith represents the wild woman, if you will. And if we go back to the the myths of Lilith, and the myth of Lilith being Adam's first wife. And she refuses to submit to Adam, allegedly. And so God kicks her out of the Garden of Eden. So Lilith really represents being separated from God because she's not worthy. She doesn't feel good enough. And she feels then that she's been abandoned by God. And so there's this big wound of guilt and shame. And the feminine in all of us, men and women, we've been carrying this both consciously and subconsciously. But that myth is a metaphor of how humanity at some point decided to shun the wild woman. And this kind of box that women got put in, got smaller and smaller and smaller. Of course, the masculine energy has been affected by that as well on many levels. The masculine has suffered because, whether we're men or women, we all have this aspect of being wild and free inside of us that wants to be released. But in many cases, both men and women have been shut down and put in these boxes. So this cycle of Lilith goes back to the separation wound. And if you watch the video I posted on healing the separation wound, I talked a lot about this and how this started in 2018. And now this energy of Lilith is bringing this stuff to a conclusion. Of course, it's not going to be necessarily this month or even this year that we bring this to a conclusion. As you can see, it started in 2018. So it takes us a long time. I don't want to say a long time, but it takes time, and we have to have patience in healing these things. But I think for a lot of people, they're feeling this inside. They're feeling this shift inside. And that's why I called the overall video for 2023 Serious Shifts. And that's a play on words because I'm referring to the star Sirius. So we have Lilith and Pluto representing our shadow and these places where we have guilt and shame and we want to hide and we want to repress ourselves in both the masculine and feminine form, and being aspected by this new moon. Now, the new moon is in Aquarius and on a past life level represents trauma. So a lot of what this cross is about is clearing subconscious fears and past life trauma. And it's very necessary to do that right now so that we're prepared to take the next steps in a couple months. And really, February, we're going to start to see shifts with this energy, but there will still be clearing going on. So the energy that's here is being undeserving and feeling abandoned by God. And because we feel abandoned by God, we disconnect from our spirit. This is really an important part to understand when we're healing separation. And a lot of this being disconnected from our spirit is happening subconsciously. We don't even recognize that we're doing it. But especially when we feel that our prayers aren't being answered, or why does God let this happen? Let's say there's a natural disaster and we think, why does God let this happen? What we do as human beings is we judge everything and we see everything as bad. We're always looking for the bad in things. An energy that's been coming up a lot around this year is death energy, because I think there's some kind of clearing happening around the death energy. But I think this is a good example, is when someone dies, we feel that very deeply and our human self, and we think, why did God do that? Why did God take this person? We feel abandoned in that moment from God because we see death as something negative instead of maybe seeing it as that person is freed, or that person, they're not gone, they're just transitioning to a different dimension and a different life. But it's that a reflection of separation that we feel in that grief. So what I'm getting at is, when we feel like God isn't hearing us and God isn't answering our prayers, if we feel that enough, then we disconnect from God, because we're trying to avoid the pain, and we don't realize that we're making more pain by doing that. In another video, I talked about this with your twin. If you're on the twin flame journey or divine counterpart journey, and if you're in separation from that divine counterpart, you can feel so much pain that you try to disconnect from them because you don't want to feel the pain, but inadvertently you disconnect from God, because the twin flame journey is about you, your twin, and God is a key component to that journey. And I say God very openly, whatever God is to you. I could use goddess in turn as well. Source energy, I could be using any of those words, so don't get hung up on the words that I'm using. So we've got this cross, and with the North and South Node, we know that we're needing to heal trauma. The South Node is in Scorpio. Often that's relationship trauma, betrayal, and victimhood, and feeling powerless, especially when we've got Pluto, the ruler of Mars, the ruler of Scorpio, being activated. And also Mars, even though Mars isn't in the cross, Mars is also being highly activated right now with the South Node. So what we could say is that both rulers of Scorpio, Mars and Pluto, are triggering off the South Node. So there's a lot of karma being cleared. I've been telling the people that watch me that January is very important for clearing our karmic energy. So I hope that each of you are making a conscious effort to do clearing work. And my spirit guides tell me that the number one thing to do to clear karma is using the violet flame, which I have a video on my website if you don't know about the violet flame. Second thing is Ho'oponopono. It's very good for clearing karmic energy, and we can use Ho'oponopono in a very deep way, much deeper than is kind of just glossed over a lot of times. I also have a video on using Ho'oponopono that I will link. And the third thing is just really like continually clearing your energy, because things will get kicked up from these other timelines and you want to clear out your energy. Also, hypnosis is really good as well. Past life regression. That's if you feel like you want to go very deep into something, or you feel like you're having a hard time letting something go, you might want to try hypnosis. Anyways, the biggest thing is making that conscious effort. Oh, I also have the 50-point cosmic cleansing, which also can help release karma. And I'll link all those videos. So we've got that going on. I want to talk about the Sabian symbols now, because the Sabian symbols tell a real story here. The Sabian symbol for the new moon is an unexpected thunderstorm. And the key words are something that drops on you out of nowhere, things erupting and happening fast, tempest in a teacup, shocks and confrontation of raw energy, thunder, lightning, electricity, the Tower card, being a lightning rod, losing control without warning, emotional instability, a backdraft of emotions, seizing up with fear, sudden unleashing of emotions. Well, a lot of what we're doing right now, part of this karmic clearing has to do with clearing our emotional body, because we're trying to reach a place of neutrality so that we don't get triggered as much, because that's an important feature of us moving forward. However, there's several things in the Sabian symbols that suggest that something unexpected is going to happen. We've got two Sabian symbols that have to do with storms. So there could actually be a storm. And the last time I got information that there could be a storm, I actually got a blizzard where I live and 5 feet of snow. So that's certainly possible for some of you. But also this storm can be the storm of our inner emotions, what's been suppressed. And especially when we start clearing our inner shame and guilt, then that triggers a lot of uncomfortable emotions that we have to deal with. Now, Lilith, on the other hand, is on an epidemic of mumps. Hysterical feelings, things getting out of control, medicine and cures, discovering the truth of a situation and acting accordingly. Infections. I want to be careful with what I say here because I don't want my video to get flagged, but you can imagine with an epidemic of mumps that there's things relating to illnesses. We also have fear in general, letting the cat out of the bag, the need for things that we get in our arm, hygiene, measles, chickenpox, bad health, widespread fear and upset, stories that get out of control. So, it's possible that part of the storm relates to something having to do with the collective energy and that thing that shall remain nameless that we've been dealing with for a couple of years. And I'm not really trying to be political or to stir any of that up, but just judging by what I see here in the Sabians, and what I got about 2023 actually is that something could be triggered because the collective is going through an awakening as well. And what I got is that the collective is releasing a lot of their fearful thoughts. And in order to do that, we often need to move through triggers. They help us clear that energy out so we can move past it. But still, I don't want to focus on that. What I'd rather focus on is this energy of Lilith and the everyone healing the inner feminine and masculine and ending the separation. This epidemic of monks, it's like sickness and like not feeling good. It can relate to trauma. It can relate to death that I talked about and grief because, nowadays mumps isn't really that much of an issue, but, a long time ago, this was a very serious illness that took people's lives. Also, it can be when we repress things and we don't face our emotions, if we don't face our guilt and shame, we make ourselves sick. So there's this healing energy that's coming in, especially for the feminine energy in all of us at this new moon. Now it gets a little even more interesting because the Sabian symbol for the North and South node really add to this. So the South node is on a fellowship supper, reunites old comrades, renewing bonds, past life connections, feeling like you've known someone for lifetimes, reaching out to others, reunions, talking about the past, the Last Supper, fated meetings, resisting joining with others, feeling like a loner with no one to share the good times with, secrets are revealed, being uneasy about facing old comrades. So we definitely have this past life connection and a connection to people from our past lives. And perhaps for some of us, connections to keeping ourselves lonely because we have this resisting joining with others. And that's part of the problem of this collective shift is that we're resistant to joining with other people, at least on a subconscious level, because of our own guilt and shame that we haven't dealt with. So that could be part of it. For other people, it's time for a reunion. And again, a few months ago, I posted a video about healing the war wound and separation of the soul group, or soul group splintering was the exact phrase that was given to me. And so the more we clear separation, the more people from our soul group are going to show up in our life, these old friends and comrades. Mercury is direct now, but Mercury is still in his shadow phase. So with Mercury turning, Mercury went direct yesterday. I'm filming this on the 19th. You could still hear from people from the past. And if you're a twin flame, you could hear from your twin. Really, like the shifts this year that are happening for twins, you could reconnect with your twin at any time. But let's go look at the North Node, Sabian. A Red Cross nurse with warm sympathy, unconditional and compassionate understanding and caring, breaking down the borders between self and others, always finding reserves of energy, looking after people's physical, emotional, and spiritual welfare, giving and receiving, doing more than one needs to, being a doormat, not caring how others are coping, even when it's really necessary, feeling used. So we have this Lilith coming into a square with the North Node, a Red Cross nurse, and Lilith here has the mumps, and we got this energy of a storm. I would say, you know, we're still in this window of clearing. We've got some time moving into February, at least until the Leo full moon. That's in 2 weeks. We want to clear, 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 and try to get to everything that we've been repressing as much as possible to heal ourselves. In doing that, we may need to care for ourselves. We may need to give ourselves warm sympathy. But we need to do that for others too, because as we heal separation, we come into unconditional love, not just for our twin, but unconditional love for everybody, including ourselves. So I feel like the things that are being triggered at this new moon are because we're trying to find this unconditional love for others within ourselves. Before I get to the other Sabians and the other aspects, I want to just go back to this this shame consciousness and my notes that I have here. So we have been denying this wild feminine energy, and we can't do that anymore, because that wild feminine is the creative energy, and Lilith is in the sign of Leo, which is the creative energy and the heart energy as well. What we create has to come from the heart. So we have to begin to acknowledge and reintegrate the wild feminine so that we can be in creative flow. We can't suppress that anymore. It's that when we're repressing it, when we repress our wild woman, our wild feminine, there's triggers, you know, we get triggered and we're trying to get freed. The thing is, when we repress ourselves, we don't let our passions out. And Leo is also that passionate energy. We can't be creative if we're limiting our passionate side. But what's happened is, because that Lilith was shunned, right, or felt abandoned by God, whether God did abandon Lilith or what, there is this separation. And then society decided, like, we have to be good, or I should say society created that myth, because with that we started putting people into boxes of how people can be good. And if we express too passionately, that's not being good. We have to be non-emotional, we have to be mental, we have to dress a certain way, look a certain way, talk a certain way, act a certain way, marry certain people. You know, society, which is represented by Saturn, and Saturn is in a conjunction with Venus in Aquarius at the new moon, creates all these rules. And all these rules are from the ego self. And these rules tell us what it means to be good and repress that wild side. So as we heal the feminine, we're getting more in touch with this wild feminine energy. And it's interesting, I think, because in the society that we live in, we tend to believe that we are so free in this society. A lot of it has to do with the sexual energy, which for so long was repressed and told, like, if you're that, you're not a good person. But nowadays, there's so much freedom. Like, people just feel free to be naked. People can have sex wherever they want, but that is not freedom. And it hasn't healed our society, because it's not about that. It's not about wildness as in just doing whatever you want from the ego self. It's about wildness and letting your heart be free, letting your heart sing, letting your heart find that creative energy and be free to express it. Think about like dancing or singing and just expressing that freely from your heart. But what's happened is when we try to do that, then society comes along and, maybe they ridicule or they laugh at the dancing, they laugh at the singing, they don't appreciate it. And so we get shut down. I don't think it's any coincidence that the Sabian represents mumps, because mumps are in the throat, right? And it's our throat chakra has been so blocked up and we don't feel safe to speak and be authentic. And this is where the free feminine comes in, because what we're trying to do is reunite with God. And to do that, we need God's passion and the inspiration of God to be able to flow through us freely so that we can be in creative flow. This is going to make us more powerful manifestors. And so it's really, really important. And again, watch my other video, because I'm going to go into this deeper than I can here in this video. But yeah, it's just letting ourselves be true to ourselves and true to God. So it's not just about breaking the rules. It's about authenticity and feeling safe inside our skin to be authentic. To that end, we have some other things going on. I mentioned Venus and Saturn being conjunct in Aquarius. Venus represents our love energy, of course, and Saturn is the authority. And when Venus and Saturn come together, what we have again is like undeservedness. Because Saturn can be our fears and limitations. And this can be like all the times where we felt rejected or ashamed because we felt we weren't wanted or we weren't good enough, or those times when we were persecuted when we tried to express our creativity. Venus is on the Sabian. A man turning his back on his passions teaches deep wisdom from his experience. So this Sabian is representing conquering one's base nature, learning lessons the hard way, being an example, reforming, guidance, turning around, leading a monastic life. Giving up on emotional growth is the caution, being dissatisfied with life, sticking to things no longer worthwhile, stubborn refusal to move forward. So our love nature, our heart nature has to move forward at this time. Saturn itself is on the Sabian, a butterfly with the right wing more perfectly formed, rising above life's distortions, bringing balance to situations, one side being more perfect than the other. The right is better than the left. imbalances, distortions, asymmetry, lopsidedness. So all of those referring to where we're out of balance and where we're needing to transform and bring this into balance. Another important thing going on is Mercury. Mercury is ruling Mars right now, and they are in aspect to each other by and in conjunction. What we actually have here is a yod. We've got Mercury sextile the south node, and they're both in conjuncting Mars. So with Mercury going direct now, Mercury is communicating with the south node. There's a lot of past life connection happening, and lots of, like, whether you're aware of it or not, a lot of your thoughts are going to be connected to past life situations and patterns. And when I talk about karma, a lot of what I'm talking about is the patterns that we keep repeating, our programming, that sort of thing. But they're both aspecting Mars, and so they're communicating because they're getting ready to give Mars the marching orders. Like, here is your next step, Mars. Go forward in a new way and free of the past, because we're really like letting go of those patterns and getting ready to move forward. Releasing fear-based thought patterns. We're healing the shame, healing the need to protect ourselves. And we're letting go of the masculine shield. So all of us have the masculine inside of us. The masculine represents our inner protector, and it's our masculine side that is like putting up barriers to others, keeping us separate because we're afraid of getting hurt. And that all relates back to the pain of being separated from source. Now, Mars here, as he goes forward, is ready to surrender to God's will. And that is another important aspect of us becoming stronger manifestors of our reality, is we have to be in alignment with God's will. Not thy will, but God's will be done. Or I should say, not my will, but thy will be done. And then Mercury is also squaring Chiron. Okay, so there's some healing taking place around communication as well. Again, I mentioned if you're a twin, you could be seeing communication breakthroughs with your twin, but also it has to do with just that piece of authenticity, clearing our throat chakra, clearing the mumps, so that we can freely communicate from our authentic self. And so Chiron is on a Sabian that you're all familiar with if you watch me regularly. A bomb which failed to explode is now safely hidden from discovery. And Chiron's been going over this video, this Sabian, for a couple years now, I think. Going with all the other Sabians, okay, we could see this bomb that has been hidden come to light. I think I've been predicting that for a while, but one day it's going to happen where this bomb that hasn't exploded will explode. And we don't know. I probably shouldn't be saying those words either, because I could get tagged. Let's talk about Mercury. Mercury's on the Sabian. An angel comes carrying a harp. Demons driven away by music. Lifting faith and hope, messages of peace, being in tune spiritually, having an elevated view of humanity, creating harmony, blowing the whistle, salvation, messages of love and hope, pulling on the heartstrings, heavenly attunement, revelations, messages that deceive or lead astray, promising more than can be delivered, losing oneself in fantasies are the negative. But yeah, this is the part of us that wants to be elevated, that is trying to shift our vibration right now. So Mars is on the Sabian. A medieval archer stands with the ease of one wholly sure of himself, bow in hand, his quiver filled with arrows. So it's like Mars is ready to go out and take aim. What I feel this means is after all the shifting that our masculine has done, and we're not finished yet because Mars is still in shadow. He won't totally be free for a little bit of time yet. But we're getting ready to embody this creative flow. And I think we'll start seeing it in February. The February full moon, I think it's on February 5th, is going to be another important piece of this puzzle. And if you've had creative projects that have been a bit on hold for the last several months, you could be getting messages that it's time to pick up those projects again and start moving forward with them, as we're going to start feeling this flow. The ruler of Aquarius, Uranus, is also going direct the day after the new moon, which is the new moon's on the 21st, and Uranus goes direct on the 22nd. And Uranus is on a Sabian that we've had before too. A man with a silk hat, muffled against the cold, braves a storm. So I wanted to pick up this piece too. Of course, Saturn is the co-ruler, and Saturn is in his sign there of Aquarius. But with the Sabian also talking about a storm, it's just a deeper indication that we could be experiencing triggers, or we could see weather, or we could see something unexpected come to light. Remember, Uranus is unexpected twists. It's also rebellion, and maybe that plays into the wild feminine energy as well. Something unexpected definitely could pop. Okay, I'm going to end it there because I have to go have a session with someone now. Thank you guys so much for listening. I will post links to my website below if you would like to have a personal reading with me. Also post some other videos below. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already. And please give this video a like or leave a comment. All of that helps me to get my video seen by more people. So thank you. I appreciate you. Sending you a lot of love. Namaste.